Building the low-res geometry for our hammer. So the first thing we want to do is build the geometry that we're going to take into ZBrush to do the sculpting. This is going to be our base geometry, so let's just jump right in and get started. I'm going to start with the one side of the hammer. There's just going to be this sort of big block shape. So I'll just kind of shape this cube out, move it across the origin just a little bit. Okay, we can scale it up a bit. Alright. And I'm going to make it a little bit longer than it is wide there. So something like that. Let's go ahead and now bring in a cylinder for the center part. I'm going to dial the subdivisions down to 8. Okay, and let's go ahead and scale this down. I'll leave it at the origin. And I'll kind of leave it right about there. Okay, make it a little bit shorter than the sides of the hammer are. Alright, and let's give 2 subdivisions on the cap. So you've got something like that. Let's now add some resolution to be able to connect this up with the cylinder. So I'll go to the side view, select the cube, go to Insert Edge Loop, and let's insert some edge loops right where that top of the cylinder is, and then also right at the bottom. Okay, so right there and right there. Okay, let's also go to the top view, and I want to connect this up on the inside of this, so I want a little bit of room right in here. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and widen this up just a little bit. And then let's go to our Insert Edge Loop tool, and let's add loops right in line with these points here. Right there, and then one last one right in the middle. So what that does is create a nice base for us to be able to connect this cylinder up to this cube. Let's now go ahead and delete those 2 faces right in here. Alright. Let's go ahead and take the cube and delete those corresponding faces. Alright. And now let's take both of those and we want to combine them, so let's go ahead and go to Mesh Combine. Alright. And now I'd like to merge the vertices together. I want to maintain the vertices that are at this square part, so I'm going to move the vertices from this cylinder. So in this case, I'm going to use the Merge Vertex tool. I'll open up the options, make sure it's set to Target Vertex, and now I'll click on the vertex from the cylinder, drag it over to the corresponding vertex that I'd like to connect it up with. So I'll just come in and connect all of these together. And then we get something like that. Alright. Now we're going to be taking this into ZBrush to sculpt, so I want to add a little bit of resolution in certain areas where I don't want it to smooth as much, maybe. So maybe on these corners, maybe up here and down here. I also want this to be a little bit sharper, so I'll add some edges right in here. And then I'll just add some edges in here so to kind of square this geometry up so that when we sculpt it, it's a little bit easier to subdivide. We're going to have some long polygons in here because of this, but that's okay. Alright. Let's go ahead now and create the mirror image of this. So I'll go ahead and delete this half of the cylinder. Go ahead and delete that. Grab the whole thing and then go to Mesh Mirror Geometry, and we want to go in the negative X direction. So we'll choose negative X, merge with original, merge vertices. Go ahead and mirror that. You can see our threshold is set too high. It's merged some vertices that we don't want merged. So we'll go ahead and go to that mirror node and dial that threshold down to something like 0.01. So check it over, make sure it's nice and clean. Go ahead and take these faces up here on top. Alright, go ahead and extrude these, and this is where our spike is going to start to come out from. So we'll just create a little bit of a bump up here. And just kind of scale this in and down. Something like that. And then down here, this is where our shaft is going to come into the hammer. So we can go ahead and maybe scale this up a bit and sort of extrude that down to something like that. Maybe we come in and insert an edge loop right in here and then take these faces that we've got here and just check those, make sure that we don't have anything else, which we do. Okay, and go ahead and then maybe extrude those out a bit to create the area for the shaft to come into. So for the spike, let's go ahead and just start with a cube. Okay, bring that straight up. Scale it down to the base of the cube is kind of about that size. Alright, let's go ahead and now take the vertices of this cube and pull it up to the height that we want our spike to be. Okay, so something like that. Let's go ahead and take these faces. I'll just select all the faces around the sides, and let's turn off Keep Faces Together under Edit Mesh, and now extrude those, and let's pull those out. Okay, and we can scale them down a bit if we want to. Okay, scale those down in the X. Alright, go ahead and take these points up here and scale those down. Okay, and then if you want to take these, you can kind of move them up a little bit, and it gives us kind of our spike. And we can take this center and really scale that down and pull it up a little bit further. Alright, so end up with kind of something like that as a spike for the top of our axe here. If you want to move this up a little bit, you could take this bottom face and just extrude that down in. We don't need the one that's inside here, so you could just delete that polygon. Alright, and now for the shaft and the handle, it's going to be fairly simple, just another cylinder. And let's do another 8-sided cylinder. We'll go ahead and scale this down a bit until it fits right inside there. And then we could just scale this up in the Y direction. Okay, that's probably a little bit too long. Then we get something like that. And go ahead and delete the faces on the top and the bottom. Grab another cylinder for the handle. Again, we'll go back to 8 subdivisions. And then we can just scale this up. And you don't have to follow me exactly. Feel free to kind of create your own little weapon that you any kind of little additions that you want to make. We're just doing something simple so we can illustrate the topics that we're going to be talking about. So I'll just make this a little bit bigger than the shaft, and I want to add a little bit of detail on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our Insert Edge Loop tool and just come up here and down here and then select those faces all the way around and extrude those out. Oh, want to make sure that we've got our Keep Faces Together turned back on. And just pull that out a little bit. Okay, same thing down here. Just extrude that out a little. Okay, and you can create a little bit more of a sort of pommel in the back if you want. Have kind of a ball back there, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. So you might want to go ahead and break up some of these long polygons just for our sculpting purposes, just by coming in and breaking this up a little bit with our split, or with our Insert Edge Loop tool. Okay, same thing down here. You may want to come in and just add some edge loops in here to kind of break things up a bit. Okay, so you've got a little bit more sculpting resolution to work with rather than having to work with these long thin polygons. And this is going to be probably a little bit too high res for our final product, but it'll be a good base for our sculpting. Alright, so it's kind of our low res base that we're going to be using for our sculpting. In the next lesson, we'll look at how we can kind of work with our UVs to get those straightened out before we actually take this into ZBrush and start assembling it and doing some sculpting and painting. So we'll look at our UVs in the next lesson.